Hey everyone, this is Matt High, host of the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast. Today I'm going to talk about the top 5 fantasy football mistakes Dynasty managers make and how to avoid them. Check it out.
Welcome to the Heroes of Fantasy Football podcast.
Mistake number 1 is prioritizing youth over proven production. Now, let's say heading into 2024, you were looking at James Conner, and what the Cardinals did was they drafted Trey Benson, and you're thinking, wow, they just drafted his heir apparent, so James Conner, I got to sell him before he's worth nothing. Now, if you did that, you're probably kicking yourself because James Conner had a pretty solid 2024 season, and Trey Benson clearly had struggles on the field to take away work from him. Similar situation would be Kyron Williams. I know there were a lot of doubts from some people in the fantasy community on his potential workload changes with them drafting Blake Corum because of the system he came out of. But Kyron Williams proved every game this season he is the guy in that backfield. So potentially, just because you wanted to draft their younger guys here, you could have missed out on two very solid running backs in your fantasy season. Mistake number 2, not being patient for players to develop. Now, I know we're all spoiled with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and all those kind of players, Malik Neighbors, but that's usually not what happens in fantasy. Usually it takes guys a little bit of time to get up to speed, to learn the NFL game versus college, and really kind of show their quarterbacks, hey, throw me the ball. I could do this. So it takes a little bit of time. So sometimes we're just too eager to be like, oh, this guy's nothing. I got to get rid of him. For example, JSN. Before the 2024 season, there were a lot of questions that we fielded on the podcast on what do I do with JSN? Do I hold out hope or do I just sell him? You got to look at each player's situation. At JSN right now, if you held on to him, congratulations. It looks like he's in a pretty good spot in that offense. But before that, you got to look at what he had to deal with. Bad play calling, terrible offensive line, and he's playing with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Those two dudes were very good at football, and they're a big part of that team. Now, heading into 2025, JSN clearly proved if you target him at a hyperactive rate, good things are probably going to happen. He broke out this season and had a great season. If you had him on your roster, he was basically just, you set it and forget it and just watch the points roll in. Mistake number 3. Now, I know I just talked about how you need to be patient for players to develop. There is such a thing as being too patient for players to develop. For example, if you held on to Rashad Bateman, first round wide receiver drafted by the Ravens, MVP caliber quarterback, really good team, you don't know when you can play him. This season was a little bit better. He had a little bit more touchdown streaks going on with Lamar Jackson kind of chucking it deep, but it's really hard to know when you should play Rashad Bateman. So guys like that, you kind of see who they are before too long, and those are guys you really gotta cut bait on. Mistake number 4, being afraid to lose a dynasty trade. This is one that every person has to deal with. No one wants to be ridiculed by your friends or your family or coworkers for making a bad trade. But at the same time, what's a bad trade today could be a huge trade tomorrow. For example, as some of you know who have been with the podcast, we bring this up a lot because this is kind of the range of outcomes for dynasty trades. Years ago, we had Rich trade Mike Evans for A.J. Brown and what turned out to be the 107 in a dynasty rookie draft. Now, Mike Evans was blowing up at the time. A.J. Brown was still on the Titans, didn't really find his way. Well, what happened? Well, now A.J. Brown is a top 5 wide receiver, and that pick he traded for turned out to be Justin Jefferson. So essentially, he traded away Mike Evans for A.J. Brown and Justin Jefferson. That, at the time, looked like a terrible trade, but now he's been to the championship in 4 straight years. So you tell me if you think that's a good trade. Mistake number 5, not being honest with your team's strengths and their weaknesses. This is something, again, every Dynasty manager has to go through. Don't just look at your team through rose-colored glasses. Your team has holes. Every team does. Even the championship team this year probably had a few holes. There are things that go on during the season that you need to look at. Outside of your control, but the team that usually wins and has a chance to go to the championship and make a big playoff run is a team that tries to honestly look at their team and address their weaknesses. If you're looking at quarterbacks and you only have 3 in a superflex league, you might want to get a 4th one just in case anything happens or someone has a bad matchup or a whole bunch of things could happen. It's about the preparation you put in to see, I know this is an issue, this is how I'm going to fix it. You need to be honest with what your team has to offer and how they can go through. So those are my top 5. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all soon.